yeah. Good, yeah.
Suzuki Harunobu, a printmaker of old Edo, now Tokyo, was the first to create multicolored woodblock prints, Ukiyo-e. It was an innovation as important in its time as the camera was to a later age. Harunobu's subject was women. Women at leisure in the peaceful city of Edo. Women wearing the latest fashions of the day. In Europe, the portrayal of feminine beauty is a long artistic tradition. In the latter half of the 18th century, the same time as Japan was admiring the women of Ukiyo-e, women were also a favorite subject of European painting. François Boucher, an artist who painted in the rarefied environment of the grand palaces of pre-revolution France. His subjects were the fashionable women of the day. Harunobu and Boucher, both portraying women of the late 18th century, both capturing the spirit of the age. But how different their art and their women. Shuichi Kato suggests why this is so.
In different cultures, women are portrayed in different ways. Each has its own way of portraying the feminine form and feminine beauty. Consider the contrast between Boucher and Harunobu. Boucher's women are clearly and strongly sensual. Harunobu's women I would describe as more emotional in their appeal. These are more than simply differences between these two particular artists. Nor are they factors limited to the 18th century. When we compare Western art to Japanese, we see that the differences are more general. And in Harunobu's work, I think, we see some common characteristics of the way women are portrayed in Japanese art. We see the way in which Japanese artists strive to give their women an emotional quality. But what lies behind this interest in the emotional? How did this characteristic way of portraying women in Japan first come about? And how has it developed?
The Buddhist ruins at Sanchi, India. It is here, in fact, that lies the source of the portrayal of women in Japanese art. Yakshi, goddess of fertility. This ancient sculpture shows her below a sacred tree. In India, trees have long been revered as a symbol of life. This sculpture combines that symbol with the image of woman, the human giver of life. The combined imagery of tree and woman eventually worked its way east over the ancient trade route known as the Silk Road. This picture of a maiden under a tree was found in a burial mound in Tuifan, China. As they moved east, the portraits of these women gradually became less like goddesses and more like this plump beauty. Women, in other words, of the real world. At last, the imagery of tree and woman reached the eastern terminus of the Silk Road, Japan. The people of Nara, the capital of Japan at this time in the 8th century, were fascinated by Chinese culture of the Tang dynasty, and they sensed its essence in the ample figures and rounded faces of these women, lingering under the trees. This is Kichijoten, the goddess of fecundity, also from the 8th century. The brilliantly colored sheer fabric of her dress reveals a voluptuous body. This sensual style of portraying women, however, failed to take root in Japan. As influence from the Asian mainland weakened, these voluptuous beauties began to disappear. Greece, the fount of European culture. It was here that was born a new and revolutionary way of portraying the human body. The Greeks believed that an idealized human body was in itself an expression of perfect beauty. To portray their gods, Greeks borrowed the human form, then strove to raise it to ideal beauty. It was this idea that finally led them to remove the robe from Venus, to show her as she emerged from the sea, her beauty unobstructed by clothing. In Europe of the Middle Ages, a Christian society, the human body took on an entirely different meaning. The first nude figures of the Middle Ages were Adam and Eve, but their portrayal shows none of the striking physicality of Greek sculpture. This is the Eve at Saint-Lazare Cathedral in Autun, France. Tempted by the serpent, she is about to eat the forbidden fruit. The human body had become a symbol of sin.
Why did the Greeks and the Romans produce so many nude sculptures? And why especially nudes of women? The first fact that we must realize is that most of these nude figures were not meant to be humans. They were representations of gods. And because Greece was a civilization of many gods, its artists had no lack of subjects. The Greeks also believed that the spirit and the body were linked together. A great spirit would naturally be housed in a beautiful, well-proportioned body. Gods were not only spiritually superior to ordinary men, but also physically superior. Their bodies were the most perfect of all forms. So, when the Greeks set out to portray their gods, the goal was the expression of an ideal body. They were modelled after human bodies, but because of their spiritual perfection, their physical appearance had to be perfect as well. I think we can say this idea of expressing perfection in the form of the human body is distinctively Greek. It's not often seen in other civilizations, and it certainly is an important factor behind the wealth of nude sculpture in ancient Greece. But ideas changed with the Middle Ages, even in the West itself. The body and the senses came to be seen as the source of vice and sin. Virtue was to be found only in the spiritual, in the heart of the believer. So what we see is a form of duality between spirit and body. The spirit is good, it's virtuous, it's a positive force. The body is the opposing negative force, the denial of spirit. The differences between these two ways of thinking, between Greece with its unity of spirit and body, and the Middle Ages with its dualism, was expressed in their respective sculpture. And so, it was only natural that portrayals of nude beauty would disappear. The Western world had simply moved too far away from the thinking of the Greeks. There is in fact a third approach to the portrayal of the human form, the approach that found its greatest expression in the Hindu culture of India. Unlike the Greeks, these artists didn't attempt to show perfection of the body. Instead, they emphasized the sexual aspect. The subject of their sculptures was the sexual union of man and woman. Examples can be seen in places such as Khajuraho. The entire facade of the temple is covered with carvings of men and women in sexual union. And the reason for this lies in Hindu culture, which believes that the sexual union of man and woman represents a union of man and the Absolute, of man and God. In the joining of man and women, the Hindus were, in fact, expressing their sense of spirituality. For this reason, there's nothing obscene or pornographic about the sexual temple carvings of India. Sex, these people believed, was sacred. We've now seen three general approaches to portraying the human body in art. The question is, what happened in Japan? How did women come to be shown the way they were? Naturally, every culture has its own ways of portraying women. From ancient times, Japan too has had its own approach. A classical example would be the women painted on the scrolls of the Tale of Genji, the great literary work of the 11th century. Women, for one thing, were not shown nude. While there was no attempt made to hide their bodies, neither was there any intention of idealizing them. And it was taken for granted that there was to be no emphasis on sexuality.
In Japan's Heian period, from the 8th to the 12th centuries, women began to be portrayed in a new way. These are the gorgeous feminine figures decorating the tales of Genji. For the first time, Japanese artists had broken free of the mainland and created their own style of woman. Round white faces, long black hair, small red lips. Rather than try to portray individual women, the artist sought to capture the loveliness of all women. There is virtually no sense of the bodies of these women. They remain wrapped in thick kimonos. This is another portrayal of Kichi-joten, a product of the Kamakura period around the 13th century. The features are rounded, the lips have a delicate charm. As a symbol of fertility and good luck, Kichijoten reflects the ideal female images of the time. This is a statue of the Shinto deity, Princess Tamayori, also from the Kamakura period. She is shown smiling benignly, gently emphasized by her dimples. In Japan, feminine beauty was expressed in terms of youth and gentle charm. Florence, Italy. It was here in the 15th century that a major change came about in the way European artists portrayed women. Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. Again, the robe is gone, the beautiful body uncovered, albeit modestly. Paintings like Botticelli's Venus announce the return of the human body to art for the first time since the days of ancient Greece and Rome. The body, until then the Christian symbol of sin, had been liberated by the spirit of the Renaissance, based as it was on a return to the classical sources of European intellectual culture. Sacred and Profane Love by Titian. One of the women symbolizes heavenly love, the other earthly love. But it is the woman wearing clothes who stands for profane love, the fleeting, short-lived love of humans on earth. The eternal love of the heavenly world is represented by the nude figure. It is the nude, in other words, who symbolized the immaculate, the sacred. How, meanwhile, was the human body being portrayed in Japan? One clue can be found at Denkoji Temple in Nara. Jizo Bodhisattva, also known as the naked Jizo, a rare example of an unclothed Buddha. The idea of a naked Jizo came about from a wish for a Buddha that, like man himself, would feel the heat and the cold of this world. Once a year, the temple holds a ceremony to dress Jizo Bodhisattva. What is important here is not the beauty of the naked form, but the respect for the Buddha that is felt when the figure is dressed. As Japan moved into more recent times, different portrayals of women began to appear. In the 16th century, for the first time, painters turned their attention to the common people of the city. These are prostitutes in the entertainment quarter of Kyoto, pulling at the sleeves of their customers. This screen was painted by Kano Eitoku in the early Edo period. Its title is Merrymaking Under the Cherry Blossoms. In these figures of young maidens dancing outdoors on a spring day, we see a celebration of the season and a joyous sense of life. From the same period is this portrait of prostitutes entitled Bathhouse Girls. One can almost hear them breathe, so lifelike are the poses. Bathhouse Girls is a rare example of a Japanese painting of women which conveys both individuality and sensuality. These are the Matsura screens, portraits of 18 women on a vast expanse of gold leaf. Arranged alongside one another, each in her own resplendent dress, they could be models at a fashion show. But here there is none of the physicality, the sensuality, seen in Bathhouse Girls. What we see instead is a magnificent contest between the fabrics and embroidery of their kimonos. The interest is less in the bodies of the women than in the beauty of the clothes that adorn them. This is a painting by Hishikawa Morinobu entitled Beauty Looking Back Over Her Shoulder. It's considered a pioneering work in the development of the Ukiyo-e treatment of women. Morinobu is not trying here to express the individuality of a single woman. His object is to show the feminine beauty that arises from a facial expression, a posture, a particular combination of colors and patterns on a kimono. Then, in the 18th century, the masters of Ukiyo-e began to carve their portraits of women on wooden blocks. The history of Japanese woodblock prints extends as far back as the Nara period in the 8th century. Ever since Heian days, people had carved images of the Buddha in wooden blocks. They kept them inside statues like this one of Kichijoten. Prints made from these carvings served as proof of the believer's faith in Buddha. The idea of woodblock prints then re-emerged centuries later, this time to show the ukiyo, literally the floating world, expressing the transience and imperfection of human life, a recurring theme in the art of the Edo period. This is a print by Suzuki Harunobu, A Lover's Stroll Through the Snow. Harunobu was the first ukiyo-e artist to create this type of full-color print. The year was 1765, and the new prints proved immediately and immensely popular among the people of Edo. tiny feet and slender bodies, there is a lightness to these figures that barely suggests any physical presence at all. It is as if Haranobu's subjects live in a dream world of their own. We look at them, but never do they look back. Haranobu has truly placed them in a floating world, unreal and untouchable. At the same time Haranobu was active in Edo, there was another artist in Kyoto exploring the world of realism. His name was Maruyama Okyo. His achievement was to move beyond the traditional stylizations of the Kano Eitoku school and to open up new possibilities of objective realism. Among the subjects of Okyo's realism was the human body. This scroll is entitled Human Figures. Okyo sketched it from live models, portraying male and female nudes of various ages at approximately life size. It represents the first attempt by a Japanese artist to accurately portray the human body. But in a land without any tradition in drawing the true human form, Okyo's experiments failed to open the way to more nudes. The age which gave birth to Ukiyo-e, the Edo period, saw the introduction of many new machines and devices brought in by the Dutch traders of Nagasaki. One of them was this picture viewer, which used a lens and a mirror to give pictures a three-dimensional effect. When viewed through this device, pictures drawn according to the law of perspective appeared to float in space. But the women of Ukiyo-e, drawn as they were without perspective or shading, remained stubbornly two-dimensional. By the 17th century, the Dutch had developed the science of grinding lenses. Soon, lenses became used as a tool for the drawing of pictures. The desired images would be projected through a lens and onto a canvas, where it could be captured by the artist. This is a view of Delft by the great Dutch artist Jan Vermeer. It was painted with the help of a lens. Vermeer's work shows remarkable skill, from its handling of three-dimensional space to its nuances of light and shade. This is Woman in a Red Hat, another Vermeer work painted using the same technique. Vermeer used lenses not for amusement or novelty, but to bring his paintings as close to reality as possible. Following the development of woodblock color printing, the ukiyo-e print flourished in Edo, the new capital and commercial center of the country. Despite repeated suppression and censorship, many were officially regarded as pornographic. They were printed and sold in huge numbers. There was a saying in old Edo in praise of feminine beauty. Since the beginning of heaven and earth, nothing compares to the beauty of woman. New ukiyo-e prints appeared in rapid succession, each reflecting the latest trends and fads, each representing the newest ideal in feminine beauty. Among the best-known artists was Tori Kiyonaga. He drew the women of Edo at leisure, against the backdrop of the city itself. It was from about this time that cotton kimono came into fashion. Kiyonaga dresses his women in this soft fabric, creating a cool, refreshing sense of beauty. The ukiyo-e treatment of beautiful women is considered to have reached its zenith with the artist Kitagawa Utamaro. With his bust portraits, showing the figure only from the waist up, Utamaro created an entirely new type of print. This is his three beauties of the Kansei era. All three were celebrated Edo beauties of the day. Okita, a tea shop hostess. Ohisa, from a shop selling rice crackers. And Toyohina, a singer of the popular Tomimoto song form. But the longer one looks at them, the less difference can be seen between the three faces. For in his bust portraits, Utamaro's purpose was not to capture the individuality of each woman, but rather to express the beauty of women in general. Utamaro sought to show the inner feelings of his women. He did this by drawing their small, everyday gestures, the momentary expressions that crossed their faces. So restrained is his palette that our attention is drawn to the red lipstick. We become aware of a sensual, feminine beauty. vast coloured woodblock prints by Harunobu and the masterpieces of Utamaro, the artists of Ukiyo-e portrayed the women of Edo in an immense range of postures and expressions.
The women in Ukiyo-e are often beautiful. Often there's an emotionally moving quality about them. But never do their expressions show any strong sense of individuality. Is this to say that the artists of Ukiyo-e always portrayed exactly the same type of woman? The answer is no, not by any means. They drew the courtesans of the red light district of Yoshiwara, but they also portrayed the entire range of women in the ordinary streets of the city, some young, some old, some in their middle age. Some they drew in groups, others alone. One woman they might show alone in her house reading a letter. Another might be on a journey walking through the snow. Yet another might be shown on a cool summer evening. They portrayed woman, in other words, in all her many aspects. They did this by showing various types of women in various situations, each expressing different emotions. Some were engaged in everyday activities. Others showed anger or happiness or jealousy or simply a look of satisfaction. Utamaro's achievement was to gather these women and these expressions to portray their entire range in an organized fashion. In Japan, we talk about the 7 flowers of spring and the 7 flowers of autumn. Each flower of the field has its own beauty, its own scent. So it is with women in Ukiyo-e. There were a variety of basic types, and the artist portrayed them in a variety of situations. It was an art, I think, of great diversity. But to speak of individuality is a different matter. Nowhere here do we receive a strong sense that each woman is a particular person. Nowhere is she likely to be very different from the woman next to her. What we have, rather, I'd compare to a museum exhibit. We see various basic types of women responding to a variety of scenes and situations. That, I think, is the great artistic sophistication of Ukiyo-e.
It was near the end of the 19th century that Japanese art came into popularity in Europe. The movement was known as Japonism. One artist here in Vienna was an avid collector of ukiyo-e prints. His name was Gustav Klimt. His own art was devoted entirely to the pursuit of feminine sensuality. Drawing in part on the ukiyo-e style, Klimt created a new artistic vision of woman. The artistic environment of Vienna at this time was rather similar to that of the Edo period in Japan. Mature, stable, but with an undercurrent of enthusiasm for the new. This Klimt painting is entitled Judith I. Judith was a Hebrew woman of ancient Israel who lured enemy occupiers to their death. This is Danae, another of Klimt's works. In Greek mythology, Danae was loved by Zeus, who turned himself into golden rain to lie with her. Klift's women, even his mythological women, are strongly individual. In the paintings of Europe, women were portrayed one by one, their individuality, their physical presence, their sensuality. In Japan, as we've seen, Ukiyo-e focused on the beauty of women in general and on the emotional responses that arise from that beauty, rather like these contemporary pin-ups. The fleeting glimpse in the midst of daily life, the momentary expression on a face. The ukiyo-e may have disappeared, but the same artistic concept of women remains in the Japan of today. In the early decades of this century, the women of Takehisa Yumeji enchanted a generation of Japanese. Although Yumeji was much influenced by the new techniques of 20th century Europe, his women are entirely his own. In Japan, they are called Yumeji-style beauties. Their eyes are large. There is something sad about them, something almost morbid. Like the ukiyo-e artists of Edo, Yumeji is less interested in feminine passion or intent or individuality than he is in the emotional atmosphere that surrounds the figure of a woman. Today, Japan is flooded with portrayals of women of all types. But alive and well among them is the traditional image, the sophisticated handling of clothing, the subtle expression of emotion, the very qualities of the women in the ukiyo-e of old Edo.